Oh, hello, you caught me licking a boot, which is exactly what the commenters will accuse me of after doing this video. But I'll take that hit because as an economist, these three myths about inequality drive me crazy, and I will debunk them and share the hypothesis that explains why they persist, and how all this ruined my life. Myth 1, inequality is bad.
If we both have 2 pieces of pizza and I magically get 2 more pieces, inequality has gone up, but nobody was made worse off. Inequality is only bad if the world is zero-sum, where if someone's doing better, that must mean someone is doing worse, if those 2 pieces of pizza came from someone else. But if I invent a machine that makes more pizza from the same resources, that's not zero-sum. That's a growing pie world.
So is the real world more zero-sum or growing pie? For thousands of years, it was zero-sum. We actually know that from our DNA itself. See, the main resource back then was land, and there was a fixed amount of good land. The only way to get rich was to conquer your neighbor and take their land. Geneticists can actually see conquest in DNA. Many populations have male DNA from one group and female DNA from a different group, suggesting that that other group came in, conquered, and killed all the existing males. We see this shift in DNA in Europe around 2000 BC. We also see it after the collapse of the early Indus Valley civilization in Asia and the Bantu expansion in Africa. Conquest was the way to wealth and reproduction. So sorry, no matter who you are, one of your great-great-grandfathers was a marauding murderer. But around 1800, things started to change. We got sustained innovation, invention after invention. In agriculture, we went from a farmer feeding 5 people in 1800 to over 150 today. Farmers are producing more with less water and less human labor. We invented the pizza machine. We grew the pie. Let me show you my favorite graph that confirms this. These are the extreme poverty stats. Dramatic decline of those living in extreme poverty and an even more dramatic increase in those living not in extreme poverty. Everyone used to be poor. Now it's just a small fraction. Not only did we add more pizzas, we added more people with pizzas. This is a miracle. This graph should be everywhere. We should pass it out for Halloween.
Oh, here we go. Some poverty stats for you. Some poverty stats for you. Some poverty.
Plaster it on our walls. Sorry, son, no more posters.
Your room is a shrine to human progress now.
Now, the story in the US is similar. We've reduced poverty a lot. This confuses people because the official statistics look like this. So the poverty rate looks unchanged. But remember, the poverty rate is the percent of the population below a certain threshold of income. So how we define the threshold and how we measure income will be key. The official measure doesn't include transfers to the poor like food stamps and housing vouchers. Those have been expanding a lot recently. So for this and other reasons, a new measure was introduced in 2011 that included taxes and transfers. This measure shows some progress. But this is actually a relative measure because they keep increasing the poverty threshold. So what would it look like if we kept that threshold constant? Yes, and adjusting everything for inflation. So let's look at that absolute measure where the threshold is kept constant and it's only adjusted for inflation. Here's where we see real progress. So the absolute poverty rate decreasing suggests we are living in that growing pie world where people have more food, housing, clothing, entertainment. Now you're probably sitting there skeptical of the growing pie story because our brains evolved in the zero-sum world. It's why we binge on sugar. The brain thinks this might be the last food in a while.
After this candy, there's only the candy above the fridge, the stash in the closet, and then the stash under the bed.
Our brains are deceived by evolution to think everything is zero-sum. But the data suggests the world is more growing pie now than zero-sum. I mean, look at how we raise our kids.
Is my son's homework about learning actual skills or about rating and conquest?
So everyone's income can be rising and inequality rising as well. But wait, is inequality rising? Myth 2, global inequality is rising. The Gini coefficient is how economists measure inequality. 1 is perfect inequality, 0 is equality. Way back in the hunter-gatherer days, it was probably close to 0. If you were to pick 2 random people on Earth, they'd look very equal. They'd eat less than 2,000 calories a day, have limited entertainment options, and a 1 in 4 chance of dying a violent death. Remember how DNA was spread. Everyone was equal, but equally bad off. But as we said 200 years ago, a couple countries figured out innovation. They grew the pie. They invented steamships, factories, and yes, top hats and monocles. They used this technology for good and for ill. So the world became very unequal, with a few rich countries and everyone else still poor. But around 2008, global inequality started to fall. And how this happened is the amazing part. See, it's very easy to create equality just by making everyone poor. That was the traditional way. Many hunter-gatherer bands practiced reverse dominance hierarchies. Through shame and ridicule, anyone who excelled was cut down. In the 20th century, China under Mao and Cambodia under Pol Pot created equality by killing elites or forcing them out, and then pushing the remaining population onto coercive farms. So equality is easy to achieve by chopping off the top. What happened to the globe since 2008 was not that. Inequality was lowered because poor countries grew rapidly. That's catch-up growth. Now, the world is still unequal and could be way better, but come on, the entire world used to be poor, and now the majority of the world is not poor. So not poor that they have the time and energy to complain about people being richer than them. This is an amazing development, but nobody cares. You bring this up at a dinner party or a poker night, and the response will be, yeah, but my country's inequality is rising. And yes, indeed, everyone agrees inequality within the US has skyrocketed. And that's myth 3. We are living in an unprecedented time of inequality within the US. It's a settled debate, except it isn't. Within the field of economics, there's actually a war between two research camps. On one side, we have 3 glamorous French superstars making mid-6 figures, selling millions of books. On the other are 2 regular government workers. Can you guess which side says the billionaires are screwing you? Yes, it's our heroic, oh no, sorry, it's the uber-rich superstars. And their data on income inequality has made them media darlings. That's the data you hear. Their results get trotted out by politicians and activists, while the hard work of the lowly bureaucrats is ignored. Here are the conflicting numbers. This is the share of all income going to the top 1%. Piketty and friends, hereafter the Piketty team, say the share going to the top has almost doubled. Auden and Splinter, hereafter the Splinter Cell, agree it has increased, but not as dramatically. And after including taxes and transfers, Auden and Splinter don't think the share going to the 1% has changed much. How can they disagree so much? Especially when you learn they're using the exact same data. See, they're using reported income from tax returns, but 2/5 of all income doesn't show up in tax returns. That's because it's either not reported, it's under the table, or it's something like healthcare benefits or government expenditures. The main difference between the two camps is under the table income. The Splinter Cell uses IRS audits to figure out who's cheating on their taxes and assign it to the groups those audits uncovered. This is mostly small business owners, not the top 1 or 5%. Now this makes sense to me. Every plumber, contractor, roofer that has worked on my house has asked to be paid in cash and will give you a discount if you do so. Many high earners though, like surgeons, engineers, or superstar professors, have public salaries that are easily traced. So the Splinter Cell assigns that income based on audits. The Piketty team instead assigns the income proportionately. The top 1% makes more, so they assign more of the unreported income to them. Their rationale is, hey, the top 1% is so sophisticated in tax evasion, the audits don't catch them. Now, I don't know any billionaires yet, nor have any worked on my house, but this also sounds plausible. Outside of this unreported income, there's a number of other disagreements between the two camps. So who's right? Well, it's a debate. It isn't settled. This is how good science works, and there is subjectivity to calculating these seemingly objective numbers. There's bias on both sides. The Piketty team are political actors who made inequality look as bad as possible, which aligns with their policy preferences. And they were rewarded with media appearances, political appointments, and multi-million-dollar grants. Meanwhile, Auden and Splinter made every choice possible to make the inequality look lower, and they were rewarded by being called names by the Piketty team. Now, the truth is probably somewhere in between. Inequality has increased, but not as bad as the media would lead you to believe. Inside the field, new papers are coming out all the time on either side. The debate rages on. But one thing both sets of data agree on is that the increase in inequality has slowed. Let's look at the Piketty team's top 1% share, or let's look at Auden and Splinter's top 1%. Each dataset shows the same trend. Most of the increase in inequality occurred pre-2010. And yet, if you look at the data on mentions of inequality, this on screen here is from books, it shows that people started worrying about inequality at the same time it was leveling off. So whatever you think of the data, there's this mismatch where when inequality is increasing the most is not when people are yelling about it. What's going on? Why in the last 15 years have concerns about inequality gained so much traction, while positive news like the global inequality data or Auden and Splinters is ignored? Who are these people that are obsessed with inequality? Why do they care so much about the top of the distribution and not how the bottom is doing or how the world is doing? I'm sure part of this is that everything is relentlessly negative now, and that is what sells on social media. And inequality is also more in your face. Everyone is putting forth a richer version of themselves on social media. It would be nice if we had just a purely honest social media. Maybe we could call this honest social media platform Truth Social. Actually, never mind that. Anyway, social media aside, it does seem like there's something more going on. There seems to be a group of people desperate for the stats to confirm their feelings of being screwed over. Who are these people riddled with envy? Well, I think it's me and people like me. Those of us born in the US to upper middle class or rich parents between 1980 and 1995, went to a good college and majored in the humanities, dreamed of a glamorous life working in journalism, Hollywood, or at a university. And what happened to us? Happiness is reality minus expectations. This isn't just some saying from a fortune cookie, it has research behind it. People like me had maxed out expectations. Upper middle class parents and the right diploma. But if you are a native-born American and your parents are in the top 20% of income, you have a 60% chance to fall out of that top bracket. This group's reality is downward mobility. Add to that, we graduated college around the financial crisis and into uncertainty. Our future incomes didn't look good, but many of us actually didn't care that much about income. We were after the high status jobs, and those jobs also disappeared. Publishing was in a free fall. Steady journalism jobs were disappearing.
Hollywood jobs have increased, but they've become more precarious.
And universities slowed hiring in the humanities. What we did was we manufactured a generation of people like me who expected to be elite, but became neither elite in income nor in status. This is the elite overproduction hypothesis coined by Peter Turchin. And based on this equation, these surplus elites are mad, and they channel their rage at elites richer than them. The actual elites, the people they thought they'd be. That's why the inequality myths are so prevalent. They feed that narrative of this disaffected elite, a disaffected elite that, while not as elite as their expectations, still holds significant cultural power. There are teachers, professors, remaining journalists, and authors. And I was almost one as well, but I was saved by my advisor in graduate school who realized there was no job prospects for a history PhD and encouraged me to switch to getting an econ PhD. Economics literally saved me from being a bitter, balding, unemployed history PhD. Instead, I became a bitter, balding, employed econ PhD. Disgruntled not by rising inequality, but by rising inequality myths. So what's the big deal? We got a bunch of angry English majors tweeting. That's just annoying, right? Well, history suggests it's actually dangerous. People think activists come from the poor. They have visions of the downtrodden rising up. But famous revolutionaries are almost always disaffected elites. Robespierre, Lenin, Stalin, Mao, Mussolini were all elites. Today's useless ethnic studies degree is tomorrow's Molotov cocktail. As a former disaffected elite, I understand being mad that your stoner college roommate is making six figures at Goldman's while you go from adjunct job to adjunct job. And yes, the world could be a lot better, fairer and more equal, but how it gets better is incrementally, not through revolution. It's how these poverty stats improved. And I know that's not a catchy slogan. What do we want? A more equal society. When do we want it? Slowly, through gradual progress, incremental change. But that's the reality. So before you burn it all down, pick up a principles textbook or pick up one of these. They are quite delicious.